few weeks ago, we took some time off to cover some other games that weren't necessarily COD, and in the near future, we're going to be doing that to fill out some of our air quote waiting time before Season 4 doing so again. But today I want to take a look back at one game in particular that recently had a few updates from the executive producer himself on the project, addressing the community and making it known what was going on behind the scenes. Today, we're talking about the future of XDefiant from the leads of the project themselves. So as we go along, drop your thoughts down below. Do you want to see XDefiant release here soon? Do you think it will? Did you play? And if you did you enjoy your time with the open beta? Whatever the case, drop your thoughts below. And if you enjoyed the video, do me a favor and drop a like on it. As well, consider subscribing to stay up to date with all things FPS content. I'd love to have you in the community. Finally, check out my friends over at Gamer Advantage for the best blue light glasses on the market. But for now, let's get into the information and updates for XDefiant. So, XDefiant, for those unaware, it's an upcoming free-to-play first-person shooter developed by Ubisoft and headed up by some prior Call of Duty devs. One of the front-facing personas of the project, however, is Mark Rubin, executive producer on the project, who previously worked on Call of Duty, most recently with Call of Duty Ghosts. So while Ghosts may not have been your cup of tea, wasn't mine at the time for sure, his work up until that point also included the air quote golden years of COD, as people like to say, working on projects like COD 4, Modern Warfare 2, and upwards to Ghosts in his past at Infinity Ward. So his vision for how an arcade shooter should work is probably in line with what a lot of people's expectations for an arcade shooter are if you came from that classic era of Call of Duty. Now, if you had been watching any of the coverage of XDefiant, you played it yourself, you'll probably have noticed that there's a lot of similarities in feel between the XDefiant project and past FPS titles from the, again, perhaps golden years of COD. The only differences beyond that are some operator abilities, ultimates, and things like that, playing on and drawing from the hero aspect and elements of games in the past, like, again, for comparison to COD, Black Ops 3, Infinite Warfare, and Black Ops 4 directly. So it's not solely an arcade shooter, the likes of which would feel like a classic COD, but it's taking its own identity and making it a bit more unique to the XDefiant name. Now, the beta was a lot of fun, though certainly not without its own problems, but unlike a lot of games, this beta for XDefiant was truly a beta test, used exclusively for the developers to see the game out in the wild and have their testing on a larger scale than what they could ever do in-house. I mean, you can take a game and test it among a team of 25, 50, 75, 100, 250, hell, let's even say 1,000 playtesters in-house, but you will never find near as much data and feedback as you would if you released it, even just for a limited window, to the masses. It's just the law of numbers there. So this beta, unlike games where maybe say again we're used to COD in beta, this wasn't really a demo with a shortened runway for changes beyond that, limited to like a week or a month or so before the game has to go gold and be sent out for pressing to go to disc. This was genuinely a beta used to gather that feedback because the game didn't and still doesn't have a release date, so anytime needed to change things is readily available. And that brings us to today, or well, more accurately, yesterday, because yesterday afternoon, executive producer Mark Rubin got on Twitter for the first time since the beta had concluded to provide an update on the developmental work with XDefiant, stating, "Hi everyone, just wanted to give a quick update on what's been going on since the beta. I know there's been a lot of questions regarding when we will be releasing and or when is the next test. The truth is, we don't have any specific dates for you just yet. We have a lot of big things to work on from the beta. We want to get our server stability in a better place. We want to finish replacing the old netcode with a new netcode to improve the server simulation experience. We wanted to get the controller lag that we saw on PlayStation 5 fixed, and of course, general polish and improvements." That's a lot of work, and the team has been heads down working through all of it as best we can. So where are we? Starting with the PS5 input lag, we were able to identify and fix an issue that brought the controller latency down from over 60 milliseconds to around 20 milliseconds. So far, this has made a huge difference in how it feels. And as a special side note, we think 120 Hz for PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X will be ready sooner than we expected, so hoping that will now make it in for launch rather than post-launch. As for the new netcode, we have made huge progress and it feels much better. Now, this is something that no matter how much you test internally, until it gets out in the real world, you'll never really know how well it will hold up. So we will be looking at ways to broaden our testing for that. And lastly, server stability. There are really two things here. One was the server configuration we went live with for the CB, closed beta. That was not the one we intended due to a last-minute bug that we had found. By the end of the test, we had wrangled the servers to get them more stable, but we had fixed the bugs that caused the issues in the first place and have hardened some of our services to better stand up to issues like that. So that's where we are. We're still moving forward, and hopefully we'll have some more info for everyone soon. So big takeaways: the PlayStation 5 input lag, firstly, that was something that definitely needed to be remedied and seems to have been done. Now, it might not be as quite low as you or I had hoped. 20 milliseconds is still 20 milliseconds of input delay, but going from 60 to 20 is absolutely something you would notice. And that was one of the big things that hopefully this applies to PlayStation 5 controllers overall, not just PlayStation 5, because having played on PC with a PlayStation 5 controller, testing that out, going through both mouse and keyboard, as well as then controller support, testing it out throughout the beta, just to see how it all felt, I definitely noticed that input lag on PC with the PlayStation 5 controller. So fingers crossed that applies to all PlayStation 5 inputs, not necessarily just the PlayStation 5 console and the controller, but instead PC and PlayStation 5 controller as well. Now, the netcode and the server stability, obviously that is a big thing for a multiplayer experience online. Server stability, that was the one thing that I was really happy they actually expanded upon during the beta, stating that this wasn't what they had intended for these servers at the launch of this, but as they mentioned in this little update, once again, it is something that kind of was a last second detour. But seeing that that issue has worked out, I'm quite intrigued to see if we will see any sort of additional update and additional playtest that could go live. And as mentioned by that new netcode, them saying that they're looking forward to ways to broaden our testing for that, and explicitly stating that you can't really gauge how effective those changes are until it's out there in the masses. I am curious if we will see another beta of some kind, or if we'll see some sort of snapshot playtest that we had seen beforehand for about a year before the beta itself. There were on and off different playtests that players and insiders could take part in. You'd have to sign up for and then hope you could get involved in. But that's something that I'm very curious to see if we'll see those continue on, because since the beta, there's been, well, mum's the word. We haven't heard anything about that, but definitely sounds like they're aiming for more. But for me, I think the biggest thing here out of this update is that I love the communication, man. Like, can you imagine if COD had this level of transparency? I mean, just for like the season 3 launch, for example, it took like 3 weeks for them to even acknowledge the Warzone servers and how bad they were. The game was unplayable for so many people, and it took them multiple weeks or whatever for them to finally say, okay, this isn't good, we're investigating. Now, since Season 3 Reloaded, personally, I don't think that I've had too many issues by comparison, especially by comparison to the Season 3 launch, but I mean, just the fact that it took so long to be communicated, so many people had so many issues for so long, and it wasn't ever addressed. I just love the fact that with XDefiant, everything that we've seen so far, the highest in charge of the project are even so open about everything. And sure, maybe XDefiant felt clunky to you, maybe it isn't necessarily as great as you had hoped it to be, and that's all valid. It's all something that's subjective. That's the beauty of the gaming experience. If you don't like something, you don't have to take part in it. But what I don't think anybody can fault the dev team for is their openness and communication. Throughout the beta, Mark replied to hundreds of questions and even gave tough answers that sometimes might not have been what people had wanted to hear, but at least he explained the team's thought process and then left it open for further feedback to be perhaps tweaked in the future. COD, I mean, we just get tweets about bundles every day and the occasional, we deployed a fix for that one thing that you liked, but it was actually a bug. So I really like, I think at the core of it, I like the gameplay experience of XDefiant. Absolutely. I thought it was a lot of fun, felt like a classic COD mixed with elements of newer systems introduced in the past since, say, COD Ghosts and everything. But at the same time, one of the biggest things and biggest takeaways out of the entire beta experience and what we've seen so far is just how open and communicative the team has been. And I think that, honestly, this is something that a lot of studios, publishers, and everything should take note of. I think that when you do this, you cultivate an audience that is a lot more loyal to your product and a lot more willing to give it a try because they feel like they're being heard out. I don't know if that's just me being off the mark here with this take, but that's how I see it with all of this for what we've seen for XDefiant so far. So I'm incredibly excited to see if we get something more in terms of another playtest, another beta of some kind, or if we just keep continuously getting updates through the developers as we have with this one. But that is where we're at. That's what we're going to call it. That is the update to XDefiant. Some big ones, even though on paper, it may have only been a list of like 3 major points. But that said, let me know your thoughts down below. What do you guys think of this here? Are you liking the stuff we've seen for XDefiant so far? Are you liking the transparency and communication we've seen with the dev team? Whatever the case, drop your thoughts below. But before we wrap everything up, make sure you check out my friends over at Gamer Advantage for the best blue light glasses on the market. I've worked with this team now for over 2 years, and as I've said plenty of times, I think that they are the most beneficial product and partner that I've had to my daily productivity. They are the most comfortable, lightweight, and durable frames on the market, clinically tested, and can even work with your insurance to help cover some of, if not the entire cost of your order. So if you guys would like to learn more about the science, the clinical studies, all that kind of stuff behind it, They do a way better job than I ever could in detailing all of that. They're the experts with it, so link in the description below. But if you guys would like to pick something up for yourself, try anything out, use code Espresso to get 10% off your entire order. But that said, that's what we're gonna call it. So let me know your thoughts once again down below. If you enjoyed the video, you found it at all insightful, do me a favor and drop a like on it. And if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing to stay up to date with all things Modern Warfare 2, but also a ton of other FPS content here upcoming. We got some cool stuff here with Battlefield 2042 Season 5 is upcoming in a couple of weeks. XDefiant is getting updates still. A couple of other things I want to touch on, so if you guys are interested in any of that, I'd love to have you in the community. But for now, thanks so much for watching. My name is Espresso. I'll see you guys later. Take care and peace.